I thought, well, literally, this is the only star I know. So I'm going to write a script. So I wrote I think it was about 6-page long script about an aging hitman who has an epiphany on a job in Niagara Falls in the middle of winter, and decides he wants to get out of the game. I sent the script to his agent, Denny Bond, who's one of the guys who used to manage like Ringo Starr and the Monkees and stuff, and he's a guy who drives a powder blue Corniche Rolls Royce and lives on a horse farm, and he's just genius. I mean, this guy is fantastic. And he called me up back and he said, oh, well, Lee wants to do it. And I said, well, we've got no money. And he goes, yep, he'll do it for free. So Lee turns up in Niagara Falls, and away we go. These severed hands turn up in laundromats. People discover them. Then a tiny other little hand emerges from the hand and rips off your own hand and attaches it to yourself and makes you immortal. And this was a totally wild thing. Dylan Baker was starred opposite Blair Brown. Dylan Baker's the guy from Happiness. He played the pedophile doctor. And Blair Brown was opposite William Hurt in Altered States. Dylan Baker plays a pathologist who is deeply in love with Blair Brown's detective. And so as they're studying this severed hand on his pathology table, he just suddenly stops and says, "You're a very attractive woman." And the humor, there's a lot of the sort of odd black humor in the film. There was 3 scripts, and I just devoured them, and I just realized at the end of that this is the first time I read anything that was about people that I knew, actually about people that I knew, and it had nailed it. And it sort of needed a really filmic, interesting, non-televisual look, which is usually bright and tight, and a much step back, just like HBO treated their shows at the time, like 6 Feet Under, where they just treated them as it's cinema. It just happens to be on the TV. Went out of my way to do all sorts of interesting things there. Totally reduced the colour palette, so there was only pastel colours. There was no primary colours in there at all, and there's that kind of green tinged look to everything that was part of how we set up the cameras. We customised the chips within the beta cameras to have this distinct look. I didn't really know much about TV production at that time, and I was worried that if I didn't grade it in the camera, it would get graded in some crazy way afterwards. So I was really keen to just shoot it that way. We shot it 16:9, and it was broadcast 16:9, which was the first, I think, TV show in New Zealand to do that. And we worked really hard with the actors to get this real sense of heightened truth, And what was interesting about that show is, and this is a theme that I am particularly interested in, is extraordinary things happen to quite ordinary people. I flew over to meet Brian, and he's in his office and he's on the phone, and he's on the phone while I'm there, and he goes, yeah, righto, okay, clang. That wants a bus driven into him. How are you, mate? Which has been the beginning, actually, of a really cool friendship with Brian. The classic thing about Brian, of course, too, is that he's also the producer of the show. So, and he's acting opposite Aidan Young, who's much more of a sort of traditional thespian than Brian, who's from a working class background and who just does acting, and Aidan thinks about acting. And I can remember at one point I was quite happy actually with how the scene had gone, and so I said, and it was a big scene for Aidan, so I said to Aidan, well, I'm pretty good, Aidan, but is there something else that you would like to give? And Aidan says, yeah, I think, and Brian's like, no, right, moving on, yeah, righto, next scene. Dave rang me up about Aftershock and said, look, we've got this script, and Graham Tetley, who's a very good writer, is working on it, and are you interested? And I said, well, a disaster movie in Wellington about an earthquake destroying the place? Of course I'm interested. Do you have enough money? And how much time do you have to shoot it? And he goes, well, I think we might have enough money, and we've got about 12 days to shoot it. So, look, we did it. We built an entire set, an office floor on hydraulics, and totally puppeteered that so that it surged and moved and smashed just like in an earthquake. We dropped walls on buildings. We built a tent city for 200 up in Mount Victoria. We probably put about 30 tons of rubble on a street in Wellington. We got these big construction guys who build roads to build a road for us up against the foreshore in the harbour, and sheared it massively up like it had been, and then we dumped about 30 tons of water across it to the tidal wave. So it was just fantastic, I mean, adventure boys stuff to play with. And at the same time, there's this really, really emotional stuff happening there, because real people is what we wanted to communicate. Were really deeply affected by this event. And I think one of the achievements of that show is actually, and this is a tribute to Graham and the characters he's able to create, is you really connect with those people. I wrote it in 9 days, bang. And I sent it out to a bunch of producers, and I got a really good response back. I went with Robin Scholes, and then we spent 6 years getting the script right, so that we could get it funded. I did look quite hard locally to see if we could cast this guy here, and I felt that had Bruno Lawrence been around now in his prime, fantastic, he would have got that role, because he just nailed this sort of charismatic, very masculine but with warmth sort of guys. He came out and we did a bit of a tool around Howick, and after about 4 or 5 hours with him, I realised, you're actually already half Gazza, so we'll go with you, I think. This whole karting thing that I brought into it, which was, I didn't grow up karting. I did grow up thrashing cars around Howick, but I didn't grow up karting. And I just walked into some guy's house on a recce for a commercial, and literally walked into Gazza's study, which was lined with trophies that his boys had won. And the classic thing about it was, in the middle of us was a desk, and he was running a small business in there. And it just, to me, was like classic. This is this guy's hopes and dreams. Here he is, he's grinding out, I don't know what he was doing, pool chemicals, I think. And around him, though, was the escape, was the dream for his boys to be something else, perhaps to be the thing that he tried to be and never really was. One of the things that audiences do respond to is this surprising amount of emotion in a male, and a female, and a male major character. We haven't sort of really done it much. Smash Palace was a film that I really admire, and thought that it really had nailed this, trying to look at the emotions of the New Zealand male. For women, the fascinating thing for them about the film, I think, is that a guy like Gazza can change. Because for many women, and I think Robin picked up on this in the last thing that you talked to her about, Gazza's pretty real to them. One woman in the thing stood up and said, that Gazza, he's my husband. He's, thick but deep. And no matter how we won't like it to some degree, Gazza is in most New Zealand males. I realised that the biggest thing for most people doesn't happen at a ship at sea or in Morocco. It happens where they live and grow up, and that's a suburb, man, for most people. What I tried to capture in the film was the sense that even though this is a small place, it's a massive place to the people within it, and massive things are happening within it. And just like we sort of did in Insider's Guide, extraordinary things are happening to ordinary people.